My name is Jill Phillips and I'm the creator of Whose Shoes, a popular approach to co-production. I was named as an HSJ 100 wildcard and want to help give a voice to others, talking about their experiences and ideas. I love chatting with people from all sorts of different perspectives, walking in their shoes. If you are interested in the future of healthcare and like to hear what other people think, or perhaps even contribute at some point, Wildcard Whose Shoes is for you. So hello and welcome back to another edition of the Wildcard Whose Shoes podcast. I first met today's podcast guest in the very early days of Whose Shoes, so back in about 2009, when she did a very lively and slightly bonkers presentation at a conference. I remember how she used her slides as just a very rough guide, while telling wonderful stories and occasionally flicking on from one slide to the next as she went. I found it refreshing. It was full of energy, and she spoke common sense which really resonated with me. She despaired about bureaucracy and talked about HR-type functions as the stuff department. Often stuff getting in the way of organisations and particularly good small providers trying to get on and run a quality service. I've stayed in touch with Angela Catley over the years. There, I've told you now who she is. Celebrating each other's values and achievements and occasionally doing some work together. Angela was working for community catalysts, enabling everyday people to develop brilliant, quirky, creative, life-enhancing solutions to their own challenges. I loved it. We've been meaning to catch up for ages, but it was when Angela left Community Catalyst at Christmas that we reconnected. She had written a wonderful goodbye bloggy thing. That's her lovely description. I'll include a link to the blog in the show notes, and it was the spark for us to catch up with each other properly. We had a big chat, and we agreed to record this podcast together. I'm excited about it. I think you will find it different and in a very good way. When I think of Angela, I think in terms of good stuff in the community and truly personalised care and support, in the same way as fab NHS stuff for the NHS. You might like to check out episode 12 that I recorded with Dr. Terry Porritt to find out more about fab NHS stuff. And all such work is part of one movement really, the movement that celebrates and supports people, their strengths rather than their weaknesses, and focuses on what matters to people and how we can all get the best out of systems to live and carry on living our best lives, even when we get old. So that's where this episode fits in. Angela and I could talk all day, so out of all the amazing things that she's involved in, we decided to focus on ageing. Yes, that's you, and me, and everybody, not us and them, and we'll talk about that. Many of us have banged the drum for our parents and tried, or if they're still alive, are still trying to get the best for them, but we can only pick from available choices, and often we know that what is available is not what they wanted. But are we also thinking about ourselves and our own choices when the time comes? Will the options we would choose be there when we need them? Perhaps you would like to join the When I Get Old campaign. So welcome and thank you for joining me, Angela Catley. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about yourself and lead us into this important topic.
Thanks ever so much, Jill. That was a really nice introduction. It made me laugh.
Good.
So that's really nice. I think I definitely tend to have turns of phrase that take the complicated and the jargony and turn them into, at best, human, at worst, slightly daft. But hopefully still identifiable and hopefully speaking about things in ways that resonate with people.
And obviously memorable.
Well, maybe. But I think sometimes we move so far away from people and the language that they use in our sector that we leave people behind, maybe. So, maybe it's about getting it back to human sometimes.
I think so.
So my background, I started ancient history. I started life as a nurse for people with a learning disability, and I think I did my training in a 500-bed, what they called a long stay hospital in those days. Awful place, really. I mean, I think some good people trying really hard to do right by people, some not so good people not trying anywhere near as hard, and a seriously institutionalized view of how people could and should be supported.
Yep.
And I think I learned a lot from that. I think I learned where the rocky road downwards leads to.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I think I learned that even people with strong values that believe in doing things properly and right, and I hopefully count myself as one of them people now.
Of course, yeah.
Maybe at 18, 19, 20 years of age, you don't see that anywhere near as clearly. You know that the system, that the institution can I don't know, consume you.
Yeah.
That you become part of the problem, not part of the solution. I think I learned a huge amount, and in a way, I'm extremely glad, in a weird way, that I had that type of experience, because I think it's been a really strong foundation for everything I've gone on to do afterwards.
That's really interesting, yeah. Sometimes you don't know about people, or where they've arrived, but you don't know where they started off. So thanks for telling us that.
Where they came from, yeah. So I never actually worked for the NHS. I left, I was going to say right at the end of my training, but actually I left before I got my results and moved into I was going to say third sector, but my first job was actually in the private sector, working for a small group of nursing homes down in the south of England for children and young people with learning disability. And then most of my early career was in working within the third sector, working for charities and care provider organisations in various roles. I was a registered manager of a care home for a bit. I was a head of training and development for a third sector organisation for a bit. I managed a shared lives scheme and became really passionate about shared lives. And that, 25 years ago, is where I met my co-conspirator in the initiative that we're just about to talk about, Jill, Sian Lockwood.
Yeah, brilliant.
And then in probably the last, 20 years, I've been in roles that are trying to change things, working for different organisations, all really with a focus on social care, although not social care as we know it. That's when I say social care, I don't mean regulated CQC. I think I mean care and support that people need to live their lives.
Yeah.
So I worked in various organisations and initiatives that had a focus on that and had a focus on choice, diverse options, putting people's strengths and assets and skills at the heart, finding different ways of doing things, many of which started with the person themselves and the community in which they live.
Yeah, brilliant. I love it.
So I've probably had 15 or 20 years doing lots of stuff that plays in that space.
And makes a difference. And I've seen it. Some of the examples are extraordinary and different and quirky. And it's the quirky connection that I think we've really got.
Thank you.
Just finding things that are out of the box and designed by people rather than systems and, formal stuff.
And I've had a hand in a model called Home Share. I've had a hand in a model Shared Lives. Lots of work with community catalysts on the development of community micro-enterprises. Lots and lots of time spent with splendid folks in local communities, creating different ways to provide support for other people in their communities.
And having fun doing it, aren't they?
Lots of fun. Lots of fun.
Yeah.
And lots of challenges, because it's all bucking the trend. It's all different to what everybody thinks is the normal.
Yeah.
But I think I have seen firsthand that there are hundreds, thousands of creative, splendid people able to come up with ideas for different, and then to actually practically make that happen.
Yeah.
I know you're Jill, a big Twitter fan. I'm refusing to call it by its other name, and I still call a marathon. You know what I mean? I refuse to call it a Snickers. So I was on Twitter last week, and I saw a conference run in Northumberland, and somebody at that conference, who I should be able to quote properly, so I apologise that I can't, was talking about being furious and curious.
Oh, I like that.
And then they were talking about furiosity. Oh, I love it. So I'm seriously inspired and plagiarising mercilessly somebody else's concept of furious and curious, because I think that forms a really strong foundation for what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, it does. I love that. You knew I would.
Yeah, me too. Furiosity.
Right.
I will pop a quote. I'll go find out the name of the guy who actually said it that I've pinched.
Yeah.
I did tell them I was going to pinch it, but I need to be able to quote properly like a grown-up, don't I, Jill?
Like a grown-up, wow. We'll get there, Angela. So, and obviously as you're talking and I'm hearing like links to my work, and, I'm hearing one thing that I think I really sort of picked up from what you said is just how many, I think you call them creative, splendid people there are. And I think where the kind of particular link is to my work is that during our workshops, we really sow the seed right the way through that this is about us, and it's about what we can do, what we individually can do. And sometimes, and we call them lemon light bulb moments sometimes, and you see people and their eyes light up because they suddenly realise that it's not about what they can do, whoever they are, but it's about what I can do, what you can do. And we get people making pledges, and then they connect with each other and they have some fun. And it's, even when things are so difficult, I mean, as you know, I work mainly with the NHS now, and it's obviously these teams and under so much pressure, but once you can connect with people as human beings, they can rediscover what it is they're passionate about and realise that actually, regardless of stuff, I can do this little thing, or I can do this bigger thing, or I can connect with somebody else and make it bigger. So curiosity, I've learnt that one.
Curiosity.
So curiosity about, so are we going to move on to, now tell us about the campaign at the moment, and I guess that's a big source of curiosity.
I think I mentioned Sian Lockwood earlier. Sian and I have worked together in 3 different organisations over 24 years as of May this year.
Oh, well.
So we work really, really well together, and she has been a kind of a constant support and inspiration for me over many, many years. And I think we sort of just spark off each other quite a lot. Sian was the chief executive at Community Catalysts and left, I think, maybe 3 years ago now, which seems unbelievable. And when I left my main role at Community Catalysts at Christmas, we started having conversations about things that were energizing us, infuriating us, making us want to act. I think Cormac Russell and the asset-based community development folks would talk about what do you care enough about to act upon.
Yes.
And Sian and I started having conversations, and we realised quite early on that we're both, right at this moment in time, particularly curious and furious about the care and support options available to older people, to the people that we love and care about now, and to our future selves.
Yep.
And I think we realised, I suppose we were coming from slightly different angles initially. So it took us a little while to get to the position where we are now. I think Sian's particularly passionate. We're both passionate about both these things, but Sian's particularly passionate about older people, all of the wisdom and the skill and the knowledge and the gifts of older people being overlooked and discarded the nearer they come to Careland. Okay, and once they get into Careland, that that those things, in many, many cases, not all, but in many, many cases, those things are just not seen and valued at all.
Yeah.
So Sian's really passionate about people being able to contribute, to have purpose, to be their whole valued selves to the end of life, right? So she feels really, really strongly that that's something that's quite missing from our system.
Yeah.
And I, probably coming from a largely, personal point of view with, family too, but mainly personal. I'm in my 50s. I'm widowed. I have no children. I've been having lots of conversations recently with the people who form the Aging Without Children movement. And if people haven't come across that, then go look them up, because they're fascinating. And the statistics for people who are aging without children are very high, and it's a growing army, of which I'm in. And I suppose I started looking from a perspective of my current knowledge of the health and social care system, and I started thinking about my own future. So, and I realised I was terrified, Jill. I mean, I don't know whether that's too emotive. Maybe it is. But I was.
I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I think it's honest.
I realised that I am likely to be a person that is aging or aged alone. That I am not going to have many or any advocates, family advocates, no children or other advocates. I mean, just because you've got children, it doesn't mean to say that they're effectively advocating for you, but it does mean you've got more of a chance, right?
Yes.
So I mean, I know that just having children doesn't mean that. I know that, but from my personal perspective, I have a brother. He has no children, so I don't have any nephews and nieces from that relationship. I do. My late husband has siblings who have kids, so I do have nephews and nieces through marriage. So I'm not going to be totally alone, but the thought of losing capacity in older age, of entering our health and care system without agency or advocacy, and seeing the options available, the cost of the options available, isn't about money for me, but it is about the cost of the options available, just really scared me.
Yeah.
So I think Sian and I started to have conversations coming from both of those perspectives, and from that, the When I Get Old campaign movement was recently born.
And with a very straightforward name, and that's what I like. When I get old, it's typical of you because it's what it says on the tin, isn't it? And people can see that, and yeah. And I know when we were talking before preparing for the podcast, we were talking about what we imagine for ourselves for old age, if you like, and you see David Attenborough you mentioned, and the Queen, and I think a big part of us, I don't know whether we expect that's what's going to happen to us, but we certainly hope that's going to happen to us. And when we were talking, I mentioned that my mum was involved in a little bit in the she was actually quoted as a pensioner who faces our current broken system back in 2013. Yeah.
Oh, good for Jill's mum.
Yeah, so she was in a foreword of a sort of government publication, and I thought I could read the quote because it might make you smile, but it's that kind of like head in the sand thing, which was, I mean, my mum was just so wonderful and so independent and didn't want to be a burden to anybody. She was the sort of person who'd help people rather than be helped, and very much of her generation.
Yes.
Very stoic and so on. I don't think I ever thought about needing long-term care, but my friends started to go into care homes and apartments, and I was urged by the family, so enter Jill, to think about it. My daughter took me to some very nice places where people live in their own flat and can mingle with others to chat or be entertained, but I felt this definitely was not for me, or at least for now. My husband had absolutely no intention of moving home. Perhaps it would have been better if we'd gone somewhere together. Moving is such a huge decision and, of course, irreversible. At least one friend is not very happy despite being in a comfortable, sought-after home. So I guess many elderly people, like me, just put their heads in the sand and get on with their lives.
Totally. That's a really, really good quote, Jill. Really insightful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And there's another bit. So it goes on. I've just picked out one more quote. In the meantime, the lottery continues, depending on how ill you become, how long it lasts, and how and when you eventually die. The financial outcomes range from free of charge to losing everything. So they're the two quotes that I thought were just so relevant to our conversation.
And I think that the thing that I said to you yesterday that you jokingly said we might use for the title of this podcast is that generally people of my age, maybe a bit younger, maybe a bit older, you know, we have our fingers in our ears and we go, la, 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 la. Oh, heck. And that was...
it was more northern. It was, you did that one again.
Oh, heck. You see, I've gone posh now you're recording, Jill. That's the thing.
No, it was the egg I liked.
Egg, yeah. So there was a kind of I don't know, that's not going to be us, is it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're going to be David Attenborough.
Yes.
You know, we're going to be Judi Dench. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, we're going to be one of those people who I talked to Jill. I talked about the them and us in this, you know, and it feels to me like there's us older people and there's them older people. And I think the us older people are all of us until we need some help.
Yes.
And then we flip over into a whole other species, which is the them older people. And I think in our minds, myself and people a bit younger and a bit older are forever going to be us.
Yeah.
You know, we're never going to be them, you know. And I think that, so we don't plan to be them because that's never going to be our reality. You know, there is that la, 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 la. And then suddenly we're them.
Yeah.
And we can't quite understand how we got there, you know. And not only are we them, but we're then faced with a choice from a really small range of support options. Sometimes we're not given that choice at all. Sometimes that choice is made by hospital professionals or other people who decide what's best for us somehow.
Yeah.
Somehow what we want and need, we've lost the ability for that choice.
Or expedience in terms of what's available at that time.
Yeah.
Pure chance.
Yeah, chance. And then we find that the range of options available to us are really very narrow. And this is not about being anti-home care or anti-care home. You know, I think for some people, those choices are exactly what they would want and need.
Yeah.
You know, and they should be always allowed to choose those things,
you
know, and good on them. But I think for people for whom those choices are not what they want, there should be and could be alternatives.
Yeah.
There's a new care home just opened not far from my house, and I found out from a friend of a friend a couple of weeks ago that the fees are £1,800 a week.
Yeah, and it's not unusual.
No, and I'm not. I don't particularly have a problem with that at all. Really, you know, I know that running residential, you know, I used to manage a residential care home. I know how expensive it is to run that type of service. I'm not always sure in all instances that the money that is charged translates into really good terms and conditions and salaries for staff.
Yes.
You know, I'm not always sure, you know, in some instances, not all instances, but in some instances, you know, it does feel like, it does feel like if the money translated into better terms and conditions for staff, then perhaps the experience for people could and would be better. The staff consistency, the retention, you know, all of that would...
Staff enjoying their jobs and choosing to come to work and thinking of creative kind of things to do. Yeah, all of that value. Being feeling that if the people who are doing the caring feel valued,
and valuable.
Yeah, the people being cared for are valued.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But this isn't really about knocking all that particularly, because I think for some providers of those types of services, as for some of the people they support, that's absolutely correct. And I'm not questioning that at all, really. I think what I'm questioning from my own personal position, what the heck could I do with £1,800 a week?
Yeah.
So
I can see your eyes light up. Yeah, it's big money.
Like what, if there was 10 of us paying £1,800 a week.
So
that's £18,000 a week.
So we need to get 8 mates here, don't we?
Well, I don't know. That's for me. That's the spark. The spark is self-funders, the power of the self-funder pound, I suppose.
Yeah.
That sounds corny, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't. It's
and some of those people, many of those people would choose what they're choosing now, and all power to their elbow.
Yes.
But I'd like to choose something different. And I don't think that I'm alone. I don't know if I am.
No, I'm sure you're not.
But I don't think that I am. And to complement, not replace, to complement the existing system, could we create some different things? Some diversity of choice, some I don't know. Could we do some stuff with our £1,800 a week? Could we plan how we're going to spend that before we're in a hospital bed, flipping from us to them?
Yeah, it's so interesting.
I think, and that's because any decision that's made at that point of crisis, is not necessarily going to be the decision we would really want to make, And so, could we think about our options before that point of crisis? Could we come together somehow and plan some stuff? Think about where our £1,800 is going to go. You know what I mean? Think about what we might be able to do with it.
Yeah.
All in terms of diversity of choice.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Not in terms of particularly challenging the status quo. I think for me this is enhancing the status quo, not undermining it, really.
Well, I think it's just purely about choice, isn't it? It's not, with anything, you're not saying that anything that exists is not necessarily valid. It's recognising that it's not everybody's choice, and in this case, it's not your choice. So how could things be different? And I think in terms of my world, and I love connecting people and seeing the connections that come and go and grow over the years. So this reminds me very, very much of early conversations that I had with Shirley Ayres, who was around very much at the beginning of Whose Shoes. And I know she moved more into the digital space and got me involved in a conference in Kent that was wonderful about early evolving digital solutions for older people and making sure they weren't left behind. But I know in terms of that whole avoiding a crisis and choosing something a bit different for yourself and a bit quirky and basically being able to carry on, I think, being the person that you are, who might never have been interested and still are not interested in certain activities that are almost a given when you get into certain, like a care home, for example.
Shirley was an early Twitter mentor of mine. She was so splendid when I became for Community Catalysts. We started a Twitter account probably, I don't know, 13 years ago or something. It was our first foray into Twitter, and I was nominated as the person to do it, and I was petrified. And I made loads of early mistakes, and Shirley was a real navigator and challenger in those early days.
And likewise, really likewise.
Yeah.
And also with LinkedIn. So, big shout out to Shirley.
Yeah.
And another person from my network and friends who come to mind is Zoe Harris. Care charts, and specifically My Future Care. And Zoe's done a lot of fantastic work around advanced care planning, but in that more creative way in terms of an individual. Yep. And so, perhaps to hook Zoe into your campaign here, because it's the bread and butter really of what she does.
Yeah.
Of trying to get people to think about these things very young, and just have it as a natural part of your planning for life, just as you would do for where you're going on holiday, or just sort of normal decisions, but to
absolutely
embed it before it's a crisis, and for people to really understand who you are as a person and what's important to you, and how that might fit into your old age, isn't it?
And I think there was always a challenge with anything congregate, any kind of service that's congregate, whether that be a hospital or any, in the fact that the service, the staff are having to support a group. So the fact that my favourite tipple is a real cider, and your favourite tipple is a glass of Chardonnay, Jill. I have no idea whether that's true.
It's not far off.
and my dad's favourite tipple is a very dark beer, and somebody else's favourite tipple is a lager.
Yeah.
My dad would no more drink a light beer, and he just wouldn't.
No.
He would if he went in a pub that didn't have any dark beer, he'd come out of the pub.
Yeah.
So within any kind of congregate setting, you might think, oh, well, Jill's wine, not beer, and everybody else is beer, right? But the nuance of that, I don't know, I don't like watching football. You might like watching football, Jill, and you have a certain team, but you don't like other teams.
Yeah.
The nuance of human beings.
I mean, I'm a cricket fan, so you're way off,
Right.
That's
The nuance of
Yeah.
that, you know what I mean? In any congregate setting, it's just got to be so difficult to get to the nuance of us as human beings.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I always feel about anything that's kind of congregate.
Yeah.
It's much harder. It's not impossible. I mean, you see lovely stories of it working really well. It's not impossible, but it is hard.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of leadership, good leadership. And there's some fantastic, strong leaders and organisations operating in this space that are doing that so well. But I think there's also a lot of examples of ones that aren't.
And it really takes me back right to the very beginnings of Who She's, because as I think, my background was in social care, and the beginning of Who She's was really around this agenda that I found very, very exciting: personalisation, person-centred choices. And I think I very quickly realised that nobody at the time, so this was kind of like 2006 perhaps, had a clue what it actually was. And that was really where Who She's came from. The idea of looking at things from different perspectives and trying to discover what was needed. Imagine you've got, I think, like you, I like to think that most people are good people. They've come into what they're doing for the right reason, but sometimes they're struggling. So take the scenario, you've got a care home manager who really cares, and you've got some staff who want to do their best, and you've got residents, and you've got their families or friends that want to come and, hopefully not visit as such. You start to get into that language, just come and be with their friends. And you've got catering, and you've got the person who designed the place in the first place, and you've got all these different perspectives, really. So that was really where Who She's came from. What matters to people, and how can you actually make it work? And it was just so fascinating because they're all valid perspectives. And if you've got the farmer who's used to getting up at 5 a.m, and you're trying to run a service, and you've got to employ staff, more diverse populations and a lot more awareness, or at least you'd hope so, their dietary choices and of how much these things really matter to people. And an example I use is that if I have Weetabix, I literally like to put the milk on and eat it like within seconds, because I like it like really crunchy. And it would be almost impossible to serve like that. Someone would have to bring me the Weetabix and a little jug of milk, And I saw a lovely example once around a girl who, I think it was, the story was around someone living with dementia who had got very upset. They thought they liked a cup of tea. So it's just what you're saying. It becomes a cup of tea as opposed to coffee, wine as opposed to beer. But my goodness, aren't the choices in terms of how you like your cup of tea? And apparently he'd thrown it across the room. And this girl had the imagination to bring a colour chart from B&Q, I think it was. It was somebody who was non-verbal, and try and get them to point to the colour of tea that would be suitable.
That's lovely.
Isn't that a nice story?
Yeah.
And to actually find out what mattered to them. And if the one highlight of your day is your cup of tea and it's too milky or too cold, or just it's not Yorkshire tea, it's, whatever, then it really, really matters. So you've got the big,
absolutely.
big things, haven't you? Like where you are and what your life looks like as a whole, but also those day-to-day small choices.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, I mean, in my early days of working on the Home Share project many years ago, I was luckily enough, a whole other age, Jill, I have to tell you, I was luckily enough to be funded to actually go overseas.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
not even going to admit to where I went because it's embarrassing. In this austerity days, it's embarrassing. But I went to two long-haul places, we'll say, and saw all sorts of different ways of designing and offering support, co-housing models, all sorts of different things. We learned as part of that project about what was happening in Spain and across Catalonia in particular. And I just think, I don't know, curiosity, right? There's got to be other ways to do this. There's got to be other ways to be able to support people. Could the older people sector learn from the social care services that are on offer to people with a learning disability, for example? I've got a good friend with a learning disability who lives with two other people in a supported living environment. Care homes for people with a learning disability tend to be much smaller numbers, don't they?
Yes.
You don't get these 100 bedded care homes for people with a learning disability anymore. So is there anything that could be learned across sectors, across countries?
Yes.
I read again on Twitter about a care provider organisation somewhere in the northwest, Beyond it was called. I'm not very good at this, Jill, because I'm supposed to quote all these things proper. But anyhow, where they'd actually set up a children's nursery co-terminus with a care home. So it wasn't children from the nursery.
Yes.
It wasn't children visiting. It was actually all been run in one building. I mean, whether it's great, whether it's not, I don't know, but it's creative.
It is, really,
and it's coming up with different ways of including, supporting, enabling, and valuing the tremendous skills and wisdom that people have. So I think to try and take this forward, Sean and I have got some fantastic support from Social Care Future. We've got a number of strong and growing number of partners that are supporting us in this endeavour. So we've got the Aging Without Children people. We've got Jackie Marshall Cyrus, Jackie's Revolution, the guys at Community Catalysts, of course. So we've got a number of partners. We've produced a little manifesto that we're calling. We're partnering with the splendid Gary Beckwith and the Gobby platform. So we've got several folks who are supporting us to do this. We're not an organisation. There's no money. We're just doing this for positive mischief, Jill. Positive mischief. And we're trying to open a space for conversations. So we're asking people to kind of say, oh, yeah, this resonates with me. I'm interested. And to get in touch, to mail us or Twitter or LinkedIn and just say, yeah, let me be in this gang.
Yeah.
Being in the gang is not in any way time-consuming. It just means that we'd like to be able to talk to you every now and again. And we're wanting people to start to have a conversation. We've generated 3 key questions. The first question is about people's experience of social care for themselves or for somebody that they love and care about, and whether it was good or bad. The second question is, in an ideal world, what people would want for themselves and the people they care about from a care and support perspective. And we're making a real plea not to just narrow it to what we know, and actually kind of think a bit more, out there. And Anna Severite from Social Care Future and I started a bit of a Twitter conversation about what we would want, for ourselves, and I think that's what we want. We want people to kind of go, well, I quite like, and then the final question is, who do you know that is already operating in this space, creating diverse choices, writing research papers, asking these questions. Who else? Who are our natural allies?
Yeah.
And we're going to be using the Gobby platform to create a bit of a, I don't like to call it a survey. It's much more exciting than that.
Yeah, it is.
But a little survey thing that we can use to capture people's experiences, ideas, and stories. And then we're going to have a bit of a website that where we can put up blogs and stories and actually share. And we're hoping that all of that will start to seed some really good conversations about what might be possible.
Yeah.
For the people we love and care about, and for our future selves.
It's really exciting, and I mean, I've now gone off on one in my head, thinking that now that I've drawn you into the world of podcasts, that podcasts might be quite a big part of that. I mean, it's just a way of capturing a little conversation, isn't it? And they could be like really short or longer video clips or audio clips. Sometimes just people love just like listening to stories, and I think that could spark, like, you hear two people chatting about what matters to them, and perhaps firing off each other in terms of, I hadn't thought of that, how about this? I don't know, that might be quite a fun way of just getting people to listen into other people's ideas and grow it.
No, that's quite exciting, Jill. I think I'd have to be brave. I might have to get Sean on with that one. I don't know whether I've got the bravery, but I think it's a really good idea.
And it's horses for courses, isn't it? And it links in with, I think I've mentioned to you the work that Professor Becky Melby has done around universal healthcare, and I'm working with her to promote the report that she's done, the Universal Healthcare National Inquiry, which is all in the same space. It's all about people and what matters to them, and none of us want to have more and more GP appointments that don't necessarily sort the problem we've got.
No.
We want to hopefully find a solution, with people that works for us and lets us get on with the lives that we had before we were tipped into them or in danger of being tipped into them, and to stay as good as we can be, isn't it? Doing the stuff, however wacky or valuable or completely whatever, just us and our lives, isn't it?
Yeah, for as long as we possibly can, and I think just finding more and better and different ways to enable people to do that. And I think we've already, in our little manifesto, we've already captured 5 or 6 different examples of what we're calling glimpses of the future. Maybe it's glimpses of the present that might help inform the future.
Yeah.
And I think there must be loads more. I know, have you heard of Debenham, Jill? It's a village in Suffolk.
No, I don't think I have.
Like the shop.
Oh, like the shop?
Debenham.
No, I haven't, no.
I know John's had lots of conversations with the folks from Debenham over the years, and they're a village, the way I understand it, I haven't been, but they're a large village in Suffolk who decided a long time ago, I don't know how long, 10, 15 years ago, that as a village, they decided that if anybody started to live with dementia within their village, they wouldn't have to leave the village to get the help and support they needed.
Wow.
So collectively, as a village, I think it was a vicar that led it, they decided that they would come together and created a different experience for people who were diagnosed with dementia, who lived in Debenham. And I know Sean's been having conversations with some folks a couple of folks in Somerset,
right,
where there's similar, different types of things happening. But
that's the one I've heard of.
Yeah.
So, as soon as you explained about Debenham, I don't know about Debenham, but I do know quite a bit about Somerset. So it's happening, isn't it, in different parts of the country?
It is happening. It is happening. It is happening. And I think it's just about how do we hear about that, learn from it, realise that there's other options. There is Tesco's. Every little helps, and there is another way. I think there's something about capturing some of that and sharing it and imagining together, I think. Maybe driven by curiosity, maybe driven by something less furious.
Yeah.
But I think together, I think if we plan together in our 40s, 50s and older, hopefully when it comes to it, there'll be more and different options available for us.
And you mentioned Tesco there, or any other supermarket. And I love the links across my work. And we've been doing some work with Midlands Partnership Foundation Trust around making things more joined up for children and families, and specifically the latest workshop we did was around mental health services. And again, these community venues as a place, a Tesco cafe, for example, for a worker and a young person to meet and chat, rather than it having to be a school nurse at school or, through a formal channel in a formal place at the hospital, in a clinic. So I think the way that these are just thinking about people and what works for them, it's great to see links, I think, between projects or initiatives that work for older people, that the same principles apply for younger people.
Absolutely.
And it really brought me back. I wanted to mention one of the things that I think we really did come together with over the years was the fantastic Innovation Challenge in Leicestershire.
Oh, that was fantastic.
It was amazing, wasn't it? And I was involved in a workshop it was all run by housing associations, wasn't it?
It was funded by the county council. It had a focus on housing associations and co-production. It offered up to 10 housing associations who had a co-production project, a small amount of funding to co-produce a vision and then deliver a short project. I think we worked with 8 housing associations. Some of them were housing associations that supported older people. There was one that had a focus on people from the Gypsy Traveller community. There were 2, I think, that had a focus on ex-offenders, though we soon got that language taken out of us when we realised that wasn't great language.
Yeah.
And it was amazing that
it really was amazing.
Brought together groups of tenants and said, we've got a bit of money, what shall we do with it together? And my lovely colleague Helen Turner,
yes,
when I was at Community Catalyst, she was an associate of ours.
She was brilliant,
and she managed that project. And I think you were brought in with one of the projects that was around art and older people, wasn't it, Jill?
That's it, yes. I've got a lovely memory of taking my mum along, and that would have been probably at a similar time to when we're talking about, Mum, what we're going to do, and, just sort of getting her to think about what might suit her. But she was good at art, my mum, and, telling her that there's an art project happening. And I went along with her, and she got involved in doing some silk painting, and I got involved with Who's Shoes, working with these people, and there was a fantastic intergenerational project, and people from the local school coming and just befriending and chatting with a buddy who was one of the older people, and so many lovely human stories coming from it. I remember there was one little boy, I think, who was about 10, who didn't have his own granddad and had really enjoyed working with this older man, and they kept in touch as if he was his granddad, because it was just a lovely relationship, and his mum would bring him to visit and keep the relationship going. It's all about relationships, isn't it? And they come from everywhere.
Totally. I was having another conversation on social media last week or the week before with somebody who worked in a care home and was asking about befriending services, and the discussion was just fantastic. It was all about how can they bring more and wider relationships into the lives of the residents that they were supporting, and it was coming from a really genuine place.
Yes.
And I went back and I went, befriending services, right? And we had a bit of a discussion, and I was talking about my gran who died when she was 100.5.
Wow, yeah.
And she lived in a 2-up, 2-down street house in North Yorkshire, and she used to regularly play Scrabble with a neighbour once a week, and they would have a glass of martini and play Scrabble. And then the neighbour didn't turn up, and she did this for years. And the neighbour didn't turn up, and nobody knew why. And then the neighbour had moved to a care home. Okay? And nobody told my gran. Probably nobody in the family knew my gran and this lady had a weekly arrangement, right?
Yes.
They were friends. Oh, I can hear an aeroplane or something.
Oh.
Is that you, Jill?
Not personally, but I can hear something, don't you?
Not personally.
I just got a bit bored, but I jet off to somewhere.
Not personally. That's really funny. Sorry. And the neighbour never turned up for the Scrabble and martini, and it turned out, when bit of digging and carrying on, the neighbour had moved to a care home. The neighbour was living with dementia. And the care home was half a mile away. My gran was 98, didn't drive.
Yeah.
No buses went to the care home. And so the Scrabble partnership was severed, and my gran was more lonely and isolated as a result, and the Scrabble friend presumably was more lonely and isolated in the home that she'd moved to.
Yeah, that's so sad and such a classic. The collateral damage, isn't it, really?
Yeah, so how could the family or the care home or whomever support that, well, to know that relationship exists.
Yeah.
And then so if somebody had come and got my gran or even organised a taxi for her.
Yes.
Right? They wouldn't have even had to pay for it. Right? If they'd said,
yes,
Mavis or whatever is inviting you to Scrabble in her new home.
Yes.
Will you come? My gran would have gone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because she would.
But somehow that wasn't there. There was no, I don't know, just all fizzled. It all fizzled through neglect of relationship rather than intention.
And it's even worse than fizzled, really. I mean, it sounds a bit just brutally cut off. I mean, she might possibly never even have heard what happened.
No, probably didn't.
If you're like really isolated. So I think that's a fantastic example of recognising people's lives and what's going on and how you come up with something that seems to be a solution for one problem, but my goodness, you weren't aware of how that affected people.
Yeah. And then maybe 6 months later or 2 months later, the staff, the well-meaning staff in the care home are saying, how do we get Mavis to befriend her?
Yes, yeah.
Like that, it was a really, for me, that's something really, there's something really core in there.
That's curiosity, yeah.
It is about...
She had a friend, she had a proper friend that she'd made.
She might have had, there might have been 10 people like my gran.
Yes, yeah.
In Mavis's life. She wasn't called Mavis, I made that
Yes,
up.
yeah.
I never met her.
Yeah. So, Angela, I think, to finish off, I see you as a real action person. And all of this is about action, isn't it? It's about making a difference. So the When I Get Old campaign, what would be the thing that people could do if this podcast has resonated with them and they'd like to get involved with you, to get involved with the campaign or take it forward in any way?
Oh, thank you, dear. That's really a nice compliment. Thank you. I think I probably am a doing person. I think I'm a doing person and a saying it like it is person, which sometimes is good and sometimes is not so good. I think, we would have loved, Sean and I would have loved people to just say that they're up for continuing this conversation. If any of the thoughts about wanting more and different care and support choices as we age resonates, if any of that resonates, then we'd love people to kind of just say, I'm in.
I'm in, yeah.
I think if you wouldn't mind, Jill, sharing the link to our launch blog that Social Care Futures very kindly hosted, and then we've got a little manifesto that you can get to from there.
Of course, and so people will find that in the show notes for this episode.
Thank you.
So if anybody listening is interested, have a look and you'll find the key links.
Thank you, Jill. And then we're inviting people to just have conversations with their partner, with their friends, to kind of, have conversations. And in the next few weeks, anybody who has been in touch and said, I'm in, we'll send them a link to enable them to record what the results of those conversations. And then we're hoping to take all of that, collate the lot, and kind of produce a bit of an evidence base for a need for more and different.
A gobby evidence base, am I hearing that right? It's going to be a gobby evidence base.
Well, I think gobby's going to be the tool to capture.
Right.
And then the output from all that is captured will be an evidence base, hearing all the voices of people who have something to say about this topic.
Fascinating and important.
So we're going to be launching a website. We ran out of tech knowledge. We bought ourselves a domain name and a WordPress site and then realised we couldn't work it, Jill.
Tech knowledge.
So hopefully we're getting we're hopefully getting somebody to help us with that. So we'll have a web page and a blog space and a story space, and we just want to open a space for conversation and hear what people are saying about what they would want, what they do want. for the people they love and care about and for their future selves.
I love it. I really do. And look out for the series of podcasts that I'm going to do around the universal healthcare topic. And I think it will all kind of link together into this movement to give people more choice and things that actually work for people rather than over medicalising or over stuff department kind of thinking.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's so many splendid initiatives. I mean, we were talking yesterday, hosted by Social Care Future again. We were talking some fantastic people from Open University. Somebody followed me on Twitter this morning and I thought, oh, you look interesting. You know, Jackie's Revolution, you know, Becky Malby, you know.
Yeah.
And 100 others, you know, Bryony Shannon, and discussions about there is an army of creative people in this space, isn't there? And I think we just need to probably talk to each other a bit more.
And I think it was Beth Britton on Twitter this morning, who's one of my Dementia Challengers gang.
Yes, true. And there was another person.
That's brilliant. So you're off to a great start already. So thank you so much, Angela. That's been a really wonderful conversation. So lovely to catch up with you after all these years. And I'm in.
Thank you, Jill. That's really. Thank you for having me, as my grandma would say. Yeah.
We have polite grandmas. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, it would be fantastic if you would leave a review and a rating, as well as recommending the Wildcard Who Shoes podcast series to anyone who you think might find it interesting. And please subscribe. That way you get to hear when new episodes are available. I have lots more wonderful podcast guests in the pipeline. And don't forget to explore and share previous episodes. So many conversations with amazing people who are courageously sharing their stories and experiences across a very wide range of topics. I tweet as Whose Shoes. Thank you for being on this journey with me, and let's hope that together we can make a difference. See you next time.